Hello, everybody. How's it going? John?
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all again.
Yep. So normally, when we do this show, John is in the host seat, but today is my first time taking the reins.
Baptism of fire. Kurt is busy juggling about 500 screens at this exact moment
Yeah,
in time.
please, yeah, excuse my lack of eye contact at the moment. Um, but yeah, welcome. This is season 6, episode 4 of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. And today it's pretty much purely, well, it literally is purely BirdLife South Africa because both of us work here. I'm the communications manager, and John Kinghorn is the Avitourism project manager. Um, so you may have seen me last week or a few weeks ago rather, during the KBA seminar, which was really fascinating, and I'm glad that we had so many people there. I imagine that a lot of you here today were in that session, so hello again. But yeah, this time I'm the host, and for the first time we've got John Kinghorn, or JK as we call him, JK Rowling, Mr. 880 or Mr. Almost 880. That's a reference to John's Southern African life list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal number.
People don't go around the office calling me Mr. 880 in case somebody was Kurt is being
No,
facetious.
in fact, John insists that we call him Mr. 880. I don't know why he's lying now. He's obviously embarrassed, but in fact, it's Professor 880.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So, anyways, Mr. 880 and John's life list aside, we have got, last a few weeks ago we had the KBA session, and in fact, all of our episodes are on YouTube. So be sure to check them out if you've missed any. There are hundreds at this point. So, John, do you know how many offhand?
Oh, there's about 6 seasons worth. So,
Yeah.
whole bunch of episodes for everybody to backdate on
Yeah,
and go and
exactly.
enjoy.
A huge range of topics, all of them fascinating, and all of them interesting, and they're all on YouTube, so check them out there. We also have, a presence on all the major social media platforms, and on top of emailing conversations@birdlife.org.za, you can DM us. You can, as the kids say, you can slide into our DMs. You can get in touch with us in a number of ways if you have any suggestions, feedback, any thoughts on conservation conversations. We would really love to hear what you think. So if you are that way inclined, please get in touch. Of course, we value any feedback. We also value a bit of support, because it takes a bit of work to keep these things going, and we'd love to keep them going in perpetuity because they are simply a fantastic resource for conservationists, for keen birders, for all sorts of people. So if you are able to, please do consider making a donation because it goes a long way in supporting this project. So I'm going to mention our host and our subject who's sitting right here. But firstly, I just wanted to really applaud this huge audience that John has joined. There's 300 people in this seminar, which is really quite something. And we all know that John loves an audience, or at least I know that John loves an audience. So I can feel him, quivering with excitement next to me here. But we've got people joining us from Swellendam, Clovelly, Pringle Bay, a lot of people from throughout the Cape, someone from Dorset in the southwest of England. I won't repeat it now, but when I saw that message pop up, someone from Dorset, I did attempt a Dorsetese accent, but unfortunately I have no clue what people from Dorset sound like.
Janet, it wasn't particularly good,
Yeah.
in case you were wondering.
I'm not actually going to try it again. People from Niger, wow, someone from the UAE, hello Jane, from Joburg, Noduk, geez, yeah, simply San Sereno. That sounds like it's in California, but I have no idea. So yeah, there's really people from all over the world, and it's fantastic to see. So thank you very, very much for joining us on this Tuesday evening. It's been a rainy day here in Joburg. I don't know what it's like everywhere else, but yeah, we're very excited to be here with all of you, and excited to get this show going. So John, tell us a bit about, give us an overview of what you're talking about tonight.
So yeah, I mean, Kurt, it's going to be exciting in that I think every single person joining loves a good birding destination and hotspot discussion.
Mm.
And, when we sat down as a conservation conversations team towards the end of last year, we did our strategies. We were trying to see, okay, we need to find the right balance between conservation topics and then obviously, birding topics. And what better, sorry for those tuning in from the Western Cape, but we'll get there. But what better birding destination and birding orientated presentation to start off with, other than Eastern South Africa. So that's what we're going to be chatting about tonight, birding in the eastern parts of South Africa.
Well, if there's anything that's going to make someone leave, the windy Western Cape and make their way to our eastern coast and our eastern areas of the country, it'll be this talk, I think.
For a second, I thought you were going to say if there was anything that was going to make somebody leave their job and take up birding as a profession, it was going to be this webinar.
Not everyone's lucky as you, John. For those of you who might not have known, John spent a couple of years as a lawyer, which I think is probably one of the furthest careers I can think of from the various hats you've worn, from professional birding guide to, now working at BirdLife South Africa.
Yes, it's my journey has not been straight. It's been very, very zigzaggy. I left school. I qualified as a bird guide, and I worked as a specialist bird guide with birding eco tours for many years. And then I took some time to complete my studies. And whilst I was busy doing that, I had actually studied my LLB. So I was guiding full time and traveling the world. And I'll never forget, there was a particular trip where I was traveling to Sulawesi. And I studied through UNISA, my LLB degree, and I was sat there on the plane, and everybody else's lights off, and there I've got my computer open, and one would have thought that I'd been watching Netflix or something, but I was actually busy submitting an assignment on my flight to Sulawesi. So it's certainly been a whirlwind adventure. And then, I mean, as with so many people within the tourism industry, COVID forced me to change professions entirely. And the day I had to make that decision was very difficult, but it had to be done. From a financial perspective, COVID absolutely had such a massive impact on so many people within the tourism and hospitality industries. And it forced me to leave. And fortunately, I completed my LLB, and even more fortunately, I was able to find an articles position at a law firm in Woodmead. So I spent 2.5 or so years busy doing family law litigation and criminal defense work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Criminal defense.
Yes.
Okay, so you were working with the bad guys.
I was, not all of them are bad, allegedly bad.
Allegedly.
But yeah, I mean, I think we can get stuck into it.
So John, before you start, one question. You've changed in the last few years.
This is Sonwabile Daza. Sonwabile is one of our incredible bird guides, based in the Eastern Cape. I put his image here because this was taken recently on one of our workshops, and I'll speak more to that and Avitourism and the project that I manage here at BirdLife South Africa a little bit towards the end. But Sonwabile is a remarkable individual and extremely talented. But yeah, I wish I was as thin and lean, muscular as Sonwabile.
No, he's a wonderful guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him in person for the first time on the recent Flock to Marion voyage, and I was just so impressed by him. He's such a wonderful guy.
Certainly. So,
right, John, take it away.
Without further ado, so we are going to be going on a virtual birding tour through Eastern South Africa, everybody. And Kurt and I are going to have a discussion every now and then, and perhaps just chat about one or two things as and when they pop up. What we're trying to do amongst the Conservation Conversations team is, and it is a learning process, we are really doing our best to try and engage with more discussions rather than this lecture type format, although some people do enjoy it. But I think it's great to just be a little bit more engaging on topics like this, especially topics that lend themselves to engaging discussions. And that's also why we've moved out of my office. For those who tuned in about 2 episodes ago, you would have noticed Jess and I awkwardly hosting a Conservation Conversations episode from the confines of my office. But yeah, no, that's why we've moved here, because we listen to your suggestions. But Avitourism, I've used the term already, and I mean it's a term that perhaps not many people know. Obviously, tourism, I suppose everybody is familiar with, but we throw the word avi onto it, and we make it birding related tourism. And here in South Africa, it's actually the largest niche ecotourism sector, and in fact, in the world, it is one of the largest niche ecotourism sectors, and one of the fastest growing hobbies, shy of golf, and even golf makes reference to birds. So they can't exactly claim that title either. So agritourism is rapidly growing, and I mean, these figures speak to that, and this is quite impressive. I mean, the global birding tourism market, it's valued at 659.4 billion US dollars. It's predicted to reach 1.4 trillion US dollars by 2034, so within the next 9 years.
Incredible numbers.
It's mind-blowing. The domestic industry, it's valued at 2 billion rand annually, and that's obviously a figure that was being predicted by us, BirdLife South Africa.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are these numbers including things like sales of binoculars, lenses,
It's
and
just
things?
tourism.
Purely tourism.
It is purely tourism. It is people who are traveling for purposes of watching and or enjoying birds.
Yeah.
So it is entirely bird-centered tourism, which makes it even more mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose a separate study would be to see how we could, the market influence that birding is having in retail, to see, how much birding or book resources from publishers, from camera gear to optics, to see how many of those are birders. But it's a mind-staggering amount.
I can imagine that the like sort of cargo vest industry has just exploded.
Yes, yeah, and the khakis and long socks. Yes, yeah.
Buffs must be doing very well for the birding industry. But yeah, maybe with some of this 1.1 trillion, I'll finally be able to afford a lens that goes beyond about 150 mils.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's mind-blowing, and I mean, there you can see international avi-tourist, and this is a 2010 figure. I mean, spending between 300 and 600 million rand within South Africa. So you times that by inflation, and we've got a substantial amount, which is a present day 2025 account. Avi-tourists, obviously, highest spending niche tourists, and they tend to stay longer and travel wider. So it is hugely important in terms of its contribution towards our economy. Now, of course, it is a virtual birding tour, and as with any tour, one would need to be introduced to your guide. So we've met Kurt, but here we are, and here I am in all my camouflaged buff glory. That buff joke is now actually hitting home. So is the khakis and the camouflage. I don't always dress like this when I go birding, everybody.
You must have been going after something very epic.
Yeah, in fact, when I first tried to find this image, I couldn't find it.
It was camouflaged in your photo gallery.
Yeah. It was camouflaged. But yes, okay, so just a bit of an introduction to me, and I know there's a couple of people tuning in, and Conservation Conversations is always, it tends to have the ability to be quite serious, and we by no means making a joke of this. Is a very serious topic. Birding is a very serious topic, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of people would like to just tune in and perhaps they've had a bad day, and I'm all for good laughs. So here's a classic field guide description of this particular specimen, your guide for this evening. It's visually similar to a southern bald ibis or a small rhino. There's minimal seasonal change in plumage. Generally, the standard shorts, fillies, or anything khaki observed year-round. So generally, plumage remains the same. It's a common resident, mostly sedentary, but it also does occasionally have partial migratory habits, and that's simply boils down to the urge to find more birds. Its diet, none. Although it is largely carnivorous, and occasionally documented feeding from fruit trays, and will also aggressively defend a braai and his girlfriend's banana bread with much enthusiasm.
So a very omnivorous species.
Quite omnivorous, okay. Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah. Distribution, Johannesburg and Greater Gauteng, South Africa. There's a historic record of the same individual present around Kruger, and that was cited by the source mom and dad Kinghorn, ex 1995.
Familiar with their work?
Yes, fantastic work. Uh, I'm surprised many of it's actually not present in the very library in which we sit this evening. General habits, social and hardworking. It hails from four ways. And Sunday coffee cycles are considered semi-professional.
Yes.
Semi-professional, China. Um, and although enjoys natural history, fiction novels, and field guides, and it's also a love of all things biodiversity with a specific interest in birds and botany. Although, if you were to see my own personal library, you'd see there's field guides ranging from mushrooms through to wildflowers, through to reptiles, through to frogs. So anything I have to get my hands on.
Mushrooms, John? Just the normal kind.
Just the normal kind of
Yeah.
mushrooms. South Africa has a remarkable amount of mushrooms, and this time of year, especially in elephant dung, it's quite a sight to see. So, yeah, a lot of people look at me quite weirdly because I'll stop the vehicle and immediately go down on my hands and knees. Some think that I'm trying to do some form of bush workout. Others think that I've simply lost the plot. Meanwhile, I'm looking for dung beetles and mushrooms growing in elephant herd.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that form part of your diet, or is that just purely
That doesn't form part of the diet. No, no. But onto Avitourism and what we do here at BirdLife South Africa. We essentially have three components depicted by each of these images. So, of course, we have our world famous, and I'm not sugarcoating that, it is the world famous, and we're very fortunate to have it as being world famous amongst our BirdLife International Partners Community Bird Guide Program, or our BirdLife South Africa accredited bird guides. We also have our network of recommended members, which is accommodation establishments, bird clubs, tour operators, course providers, and any publications as well, recommended or BirdLife South Africa endorsed. And then, of course, we have Go Birding, which is our free online portal and access for you, the birding community, into the birding world.
I don't know if everyone here has used Go Birding before, but I discovered it sort of by chance, I think, before I joined BirdLife, and I was amazed at this platform. So speaking as someone, not associated to BirdLife at the time, it was very much my first step in planning any birding expeditions, finding out, local birds, finding out about guides. It really is an incredible resource. So I'd recommend, going into Google, type in Go Birding, and it'll be the first result. So check it out. It's incredible.
It's phenomenal. And I mean, I myself have also used it to plan trips. It was created during, that we spoke of COVID earlier. So my predecessor, Andrew de Block, Andrew, I wonder if you're tuning in this evening. If so, let us know in the comments. But Andrew was integral in terms of championing.
Again?
Listen properly. Championing the Go Birding platform. So it's been fantastic, and I think it's a huge resource to the benefit of all birders. And here's just a little bit of a snapshot of Go Birding. So I mean, we have everything: birding sites, accommodation, community bird guides, or accredited guides, tour operators, and bird clubs. And this is what the overall picture looks like, and it is growing on a daily basis. We are getting new members signing up. We're getting new sites listed. There's new updates being made to sites, and which lends me to just mention briefly as well that if anybody goes to Go Birding and you happen to see something has changed or is in need of changing, please just get into contact with me, john.kinghorn@birdlife.org.za, and we'll sort it out. So, I mean, this was created largely by renowned ornithologists and specialist bird guides from across South Africa during COVID to make sure that they could get through COVID. I was fortunate enough to form part of that, and I assisted with a large amount of the Gauteng aspects and components as well. But as with everything, it's growing, times are changing, and we appreciate any form of public feedback as well. Now, why Eastern South Africa? Well, Eastern South Africa is a remarkable area. If you had to plan a trip in Eastern South Africa, and when I say Eastern South Africa, I have, this is a disclaimer, I have excluded KwaZulu-Natal. So it's not because I didn't want to include KwaZulu-Natal. It's simply just because we would have not had sufficient amount of time. But a comprehensive Eastern South Africa trip can include KwaZulu-Natal and also Dullstroom. And again, Dullstroom is one of those destinations I haven't included on this particular talk this evening. But just on this route, which we're going to show now, you can get about 400 species in a single trip. And I mean, you can allocate maybe 9 to 10 days, and you're going to get about 400 species. We did a similar route to this now on our BirdLife South Africa Rovos Rail birding safari, and we got 356 species, I think it was, and that was in about 5 days. Granted, the guides that we had on there were just absolutely mind-blowing. Individuals like Duncan McKenzie and even young hotshot guides, Daniel Engelbrecht, Sean van den Heever, Jordan Rolfe. So, I mean, the birding was amazing, but it's a very, very rich and avian diverse region of South Africa. The birding sites are very accessible. So a lot of the reserves are easy to get into. They're well known. The road conditions and the conditions of the reserves are fantastic. Easy to navigate to. It's really a great network of road structures. You've got the N1, you've got the N4. Those are your two major highways, and everything between running alongside the Kruger National Park and inside the Kruger National Park is absolutely mint. Birding is productive year round, so it doesn't matter when you go. In December, obviously the numbers are going to change and fluctuate, but as and when you go year round, it's because of this diverse range of habitats, the birding is going to be fantastic. And of course, there's other wildlife attractions, the big and hairies, which is also obviously lends itself to another different kind of experience.
John, don't call yourself big.
I was waiting. I knew it. Kurt exhaled very rapidly when I mentioned the word big and hairy. And then I knew it was coming. I knew it. He's been here a couple of months and I just saw it coming. So the starting point is obviously South Africa and Gauteng's business hub. And you would think the birding here would be quite average. But in 3 days, and I can say this with confidence because when I was still guiding, we did it. In 3 days, you can get 300 species in wider Gauteng. So I've shown Gauteng here, but I speak of wider Gauteng. So take a center point from Pretoria and a center point from Johannesburg, take a radius, and basically it's 100 k's from either center point. And you can get about 300 species. The diversity in terms of habitats here within Gauteng is just mind-blowing. And you would think, like I said, you know, we're in a city and the birding is probably not going to be that great, but it's just phenomenal. To sit here and to try and choose individual sites for purposes of this evening, I almost felt like I was doing, in fact, for all of the destinations, I felt like I was doing a bit of an injustice. But, you know, I had to choose some of my favorites. And I think that if you're tuning in and perhaps you're using this webinar as an opportunity to try and plan your next trip, then I'd probably recommend that you start to have a look at these destinations as and when you're around Gauteng and Pretoria. So the first is Marievale Bird Sanctuary, Suikerbosrand Nature Reserve. Those are all sort of in the southeastern parts of Gauteng. Walter Sisulu National Botanical Gardens on the west rand of Johannesburg. Zagelsdrift Road, it's a district road, but phenomenal birding. And Gomo. That's north of Pretoria, just northwest of Pretoria. And then Rietvlei Nature Reserve, which is very close to Pretoria. In fact, I think it falls under Pretoria. So all of these destinations, amazing from a birding perspective and also from a photography perspective. Certainly Marievale and certainly Rietvlei, I would recommend for those of you who are photographers. And then you'll see as we go along this birding journey now, I'm going to showcase one or two sort of species that really stand out for me, but also I'm going to show the guides that you can make use of along these different or in these different areas. And we're fortunate that people think, you know, we're based here in Gauteng, perhaps there's no community bird guides, those who've been trained by BirdLife South Africa, but our BirdLife South Africa accredited bird guides. And there are. We've got Raymond, who is famous. I mean, he was one of the very first guides that was trained by BirdLife South Africa, and he is just an absolute roaring success in what he does. He's a phenomenal birder. He's incredible in terms of his conservation efforts, and he's just truly, truly a phenomenal gent. Bongani Ngwenya, recent graduate, one of the young guns that are coming through the ranks. He's based in Hammanskraal and does guided tours to Zagelsdrift and Gomo into Dinokeng, all those areas. So he's really, really establishing himself as a fantastic resource within that area. And Lucas Namanyani, who's also been around for many, many years, previously doing birding within the Waterberg region, is now spending a lot of his time within Gauteng. But those going to Nailsvlei and adjacent reserves in the Waterberg, Lucas is your man. So, I mean, Gauteng has huge potential, 300 odd species and many, many birds, of which some of these are simply just highlights. Marsh owls, grass owl we get as well regularly within certain areas, inside and uh, uh, both inside the city in Johannesburg and Midrand in some instances, but then also on the fringes of the main cities as well. But marsh owl is around in very, very good numbers. This time of year, it is absolutely every single bush that you go to in Ristaventa, which is north of Pretoria, Zagelsdrift, Homo also north of Pretoria. It is practically dripping with dwarf buttons. It's a fantastic time of year. We've had vast amounts of rainfall, more so than I think what anybody really expected, any of the models really. And it's just been fantastic seeing these birds around. So they're around in good numbers. In fact, I've been waiting for one. It's been so wet with all this rain. I've been waiting for one to turn up at this little house. I wouldn't be surprised.
It wouldn't be that surprising. I mean, we've got some fantastic birds at Distal House, don't we?
It's been very, very good.
In the middle of
yeah,
where are we? Dunkeld West.
yeah,
And we've had an incredible. We keep a list, and it's in the over 200 now, I'd say.
yeah. I think I mean I must double check, but yeah, it's certainly high and it's certainly impressive. And I mean, there's some mega things that have turned up. I mean, marsh warbler has been hanging around just outside of my office as well. The work that our colleagues at the organization, and specifically Tanya Anderson, Mark Anderson's wife, has done to bring the gardens around Isdale House to the state that they're in now is just mind-blowing. It's fantastic. You walk out, there's natural grasses everywhere. There's bronze mannequins that successfully bred in the gardens here and in the grass. It's amazing.
Yeah, there's barbets in every other tree.
Yeah.
Just today we had greenwood hoopoes all over the show, distracting everyone from their work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great. And kingfishers as well. I mean, this is a malachite kingfisher. This is quite common in most of the water sources. We haven't had one, I don't think, at Isdale. But we have had pied and brown hooded before. So they're also around in the middle of suburbia. Just an example of one of the images that you could get if you travel to the likes of Lowveld or Rietvlei. This is an African snipe. And, these destinations really give you a fantastic opportunity to take some excellent photographs. So yeah, it's certainly worthwhile going and having a look. And then you wouldn't think that we'd get blue crane up here either. I mean, blue crane is a phenomenal bird to come across at any destination within South Africa. It's our national bird. And obviously they're of conservation importance. So certainly fantastic to see these birds. We see them in northeast of Pretoria, in the areas just north, those Highveld grasslands north of Bronkhorstspruit. And then you also get them in the southern grasslands around the areas such as Devon and Leandra. And then we continue along our journey to Dullstroom, which is the world's highest, not the world, I think it's South Africa's highest town. Funny enough, I found this out not because I was anything birding related. I'd gone there to meet with our colleagues Carl and Marlies, who are involved with our Mpumalanga grasslands wetland conservation specifically. Carl is the Rock Jumper Fellow of Grasslands Conservation, I think it is, or Wetland Conservation. Forgive me, Carl. But long story short is I went there and I met with them, and I decided to take my mountain bike with me. And so I was busy. One afternoon, I finished work, I climbed into the saddle, and off I started going. And I went off at this sort of standard tempo that I would go at, which in my instance isn't particularly fast in any event. So, but nevertheless, I started going, and I was like 5 minutes into it, and I was like couldn't breathe. Now, again, I thought, no, yeah, I've got asthma, like maybe I'm getting sick. Anyway, I finish, I soldier through, I get back, and I'm absolutely broken. My muscles feel tired, I'm exhausted. And I go and I check my Strava, and it's like the elevation, like over 2,000 meters above sea level. I'm like, oh my soul, this is mind-blowing. Yeah, that explains it. So, yeah, you can't run after birds when you're busy birding in Dullstroom because
just a sedate walk.
Yes, just a subtle walk. I think if you even break out into a bit of a jog, it may be problematic. You may need a breathalyzer. Not a breathalyzer, a ventilator. Yeah.
You'd go doing what you love there.
Yes. Yeah. Correct.
Tell us a bit about the hotspots.
So, I mean, there's a couple around Dullstroom. These are the must visits. So Walkerson's estate is a private estate. There is accommodation for birders there. Walkerson's Hotel, check them out. It's amazing. It's absolutely fast, unlike Donald Trump. It's amazing. It's the greatest hotel. Watch everybody log off now. But no, it really is fantastic, and yeah, would strongly recommend you have a look at it. The birding there is absolutely excellent. We had fan-tailed grassbird, there's bush blackcap, there's red-winged franklin. It's just mind-blowing. So Walkerson's estate, and obviously there's fantastic trout fishing as well if you are that way inclined. Verloren Vallei Nature Reserve also must visit destination. And I'll tell you what, if you aren't a botanist or have a mild interest in botany, then you need to try and at least just get into it a little bit, or at least just appreciate it when you go to Verloren Vallei, because the botany there is just it's hard for me to even describe. Part of our Rovos Rail birding safari that BirdLife South Africa did was a stop in Dullstroom, and we traveled to Verloren Vallei Nature Reserve. Duncan McKenzie, who is a remarkable ecologist, phenomenal birder, but equally phenomenal botanist, took us through the grasslands there at Verloren Vallei, and it was mind-blowing. I mean, eventually we had everybody running after plants, well, not running, brisk walk after plants, because Duncan was finding an orchid here or a dwarf protea here, and then we were finding a gladiolus there, which is an iris species, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. And I think again, it just lends itself to birders and the fact that we have this innate curiosity to discover a whole bunch of things, which is why I find myself at nose level with elephant dung. Because there's just everything that just really, really interests me, and I think it interests everybody. So
I think from a conservation perspective, that Greater Steenkampsberg Plateau area is home to 3 Ramsar sites. And if you don't know, Ramsar sites are wetlands that are designated to be of international importance. So it's really remarkable to have so many in one area. It's a seriously pristine environment, and yeah, let's hope that we can continue keeping it that way.
And we have a lot of work going on in that area as well. I mean, our colleagues, Carl and Marlies, are permanently based in Dullstroom. And I mean, the engagement that they're doing to establish these Steenkampsberg roadside birding routes is phenomenal. They've spent many hours, if not days and weeks, engaging with landowners in that area and establishing these routes. And all those district roads that you can see in and around the town of Dullstroom there are worth exploring. And I would recommend that you go to the BirdLife South Africa website, go to the Steenkampsberg roadside birding routes, or just the Steenkampsberg birding, and it should bring it up on our BirdLife South Africa website. And you'll see all of the roadside routes. There's KML map files, there's wayfinding points and signages along the way, there's QR codes as well, so when you get to a certain spot you want to perhaps scan and learn something about a specific part of that route, it's all there, and it's really, really excellent. So I would certainly recommend that you have a look at that. And then Verloren Kloof as well, which is nearby, and also well worth a visit. Little remnant patch of forest in the little valley there. So you get a mixture of grassland, and then all of a sudden you're busy getting olive bushshrike and bush blackcap, and it's very weird, but exceptional birding nonetheless. And then I have just put a note there. Please just consider signing up. Dullstroom, from a strategic point of view, is an area where we really want to develop Avitourism going forward into 2025 and 2026. It's already a tourist hotspot. It's a fly fishing hotspot, and apparently there's this thing called whiskey that happens there as well. So it should be known for birding, because the birding is just phenomenal, and it's 3 hours away from Johannesburg, 2 hours away from Pretoria. It's a no-brainer. Really, really it is. So please, if you want to have a destination or accommodation establishment listed in Dullstroom, please just get into contact with me. And I mean, tying into those pristine grasslands is a species which is indicative of good quality grassland, and that's this magnificently plumed yellow-breasted pipit. Dullstroom is a notoriously good place to try and locate the species. And I have really only just used this species as the photographic highlight of Dullstroom, but there's many other birds that you can find there. Ground woodpeckers, Gurney sugarbird, Malachite sunbird, rufous-breasted sparrowhawks. Cape eagle owl is occasionally in and around the town itself. Like I said, the Scleroptera franklins, grey-winged and red-winged franklins, common quails. It's a mind-blowing destination to spend time birding in. And I found myself running off on a bit of a tangent when we got to this particular part of Eastern South Africa because this is one of my favorite parts, and it's probably hands down one of the busiest. And again, I mean, I had to resort to just like towns instead of specific places because there's just so many. And I mean, it's basically a talk by itself, birding the Greater Kruger National Park and the Lowveld. But, for purposes of this, I really wanted to make sure that we could just cram these in so that you guys could just go and explore it. And you'll see, I mean, we have 6 accredited birding guides trained by BirdLife South Africa operating within this area. Enos Zulu is operating in Kaapsehoop. He's been operating for over 20 years. Initially, I'm sure Enos has showed many of you tuning in here blue swallows initially, whilst the blue swallows were still in Kaapsehoop. Now, Enos, obviously, because the blue swallows aren't there, still shows you amazing birds like striped flufftail, bush blackcap, a whole bunch of forest specials which are in that area, those remnant bit of forest patches, Barrett's warbler, they're all there. And Enos is there to show them to you. He's an exceptional guide. And then, of course, we've got our Lowveld guides, which are based in and around north and south of Hoedspruit, roughly as the center point. Michael Kamako, who's been based at the Abel Erasmus Pass for many, many years, showing you Tighter Falcon. And unfortunately, that pair of Tighter have now moved off, but Michael is still actively guiding in the area. Joel Sitole, Tabelo, Bednik, Sam, they're all operating within that greater Hoedspruit area, and they're all exceptional birders. So again, any of these guides whose details are here, whose names are being mentioned, all of their details are on Go Birding. So you simply filter it to the province and you'll be able to find them there. But from a bird spot perspective, the Kruger National Park needs no introduction. And I can't choose any one region of the Kruger National Park, to be quite honest with you. The south is exceptional in rainy season. The areas around Lower Sabi, those grasslands there are just packed. I mean, they get absolutely swamped both in terms of water and also in terms of black kukels that arrive. And then you go to Skukuza and the birding around there within the nursery. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have crowned eagle at Skukuza nursery before on the access road, which is a huge rarity. The camp itself is massively productive, and then of course the variety of habitats within Kruger. And again, I mean, I'm actually starting to sweat because it's not only is the lack of ventilation in this library quite something, but I'm actually genuinely excited about the Kruger National Park because it's just remarkable. So yeah, the southern parts of Kruger is exceptional, and then of course the northern regions, Pafuri, Puna Maria, need no introduction.
Yeah,
if
it's
you need,
legendary.
it's absolute. It's a thing of dreams. It's just remarkable. So yeah, I mean, if you need Pennywing Nightjar, Puna Maria, November into early December, don't leave it too late. That is when you're going to get it. Book yourself on a sunset drive, speak to the guys, tell them you're there for Pennywing Nightjar, go and get it. It is an absolute spectacle to witness. Mind-blowing. And then you can tie it in with birding around the Mahuni Loop, possibilities of Kruger megas, South African megas like white-breasted cuckoo-shrike, and southern high leota as well. And then, of course, Arnott's chat, racket-tailed roller. Just these absolutely, you open those, it's those birds, you open your field guide when you initially start birding, you're like, yeah, I'm never going to see, never going to see, never going to see. Those are the kind of birds that you get up at Punamaria and Pafuri.
Yeah. Well, depending on your, skill level getting into birding, it's the kind of birds where, you see them in the field guide and you start looking in your garden for them because
Yes.
nothing better.
Yeah.
And it takes a while before you realize, that a lot of work needs to go into to get out and see some of these birds.
So it's phenomenal birding destinations, and some of my earliest and most fond memories of birding were up at Pafuri picnic spot. For those of you who've been birding for some time would know of the picnic spot manager of the late Frank Mabaso, who was there and who took care of that picnic spot. Frank showed me my very first black-throated wattleye. There I was, young 13-year-old John, and Frank was there busy showing me these incredible birds that are hanging around the Pafuri picnic spot. And I mean that Frank was also a BirdLife South Africa accredited bird guide as well. So the whole of the Kruger National Park is just amazing. Nullspruit, exceptional birding as well. This is a screenshot of Nullspruit, an indication as to the sites that are there as well. Stellites or Stellites Nature Reserve, forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Stuff like Narina Trogan, gorgeous bushwrack. These are all birds that we picked up recently whilst there. Those who are tuning in from Nelspruit will testify for the fact that it really has this, again, it's this diverse array of birds. You can then go to the Lowveld National Botanical Gardens, which has to be one of the most impeccable botanical gardens and productive from a birding perspective in the whole of South Africa. Next to the likes of Walter Sisulu and Kirstenbosch in Cape Town, in my personal opinion. So certainly try and look and visit these sites in Nelspruit. And they're all safe and they're all easy to get to access generally. And all those details again are listed at these individual sites on Go Birding. Hoedspruit's very fast and rapidly becoming the wildlife tourism-based capital of South Africa. It's a bustling little tourist town that thrives on the adjacent Kruger National Park and private reserves. It really, really is just going to new heights. There's new developments in the area, new hospitals that are going up. The airport's undergoing renovations. So it's a hive. I mean, there's not once I've been fortunate to go through Hoedspruit recently, quite a lot of times. One of our colleagues, Martin Taylor, also one of the initial Avitourism project managers back in the day here at BirdLife, is now based in Hoedspruit.
Lucky man.
Lucky man. I'd rather be having road rage with warthogs crossing the road than, taxis on this side of the world. It's an absolutely amazing destination, and it places you nicely to experience the Kruger National Park and also those adjacent reserves, which not all of which are as costly as what some may think may be. So just keep that in mind as well. And Kaapsehoop is one of those destinations where I must just implore. I'm just having a look at some of these comments quickly here. I can vouch for Michael Kumako, really keen and knowledgeable guy. Andrew, thank you so much. Anthony, Hoedspruit is an amazing place to live. I can believe it. Sometimes I close my eyes and then I put soundscapes on to listen to the calls of African scaup owls and bladder grasshoppers, which make that characteristic sound of the bushveld.
I can believe it.
And many of you just passing comments about how the fact that you make use of Go Birding quite regularly. So thank you for that, everyone. All right, speeding up, just some highlights, obviously, of this area. So southern ground hornbill, amazing birds to see. Some of the private reserves in that area, such as Sandringham, they involved heavily in terms of putting up nesting boxes for these birds and trying to reintroduce them into the areas. So it's absolutely stunning. There's nothing better than those early mornings and late evenings where you hear that. It's very, very cool. I've been practicing that for about a week. Every morning I wake up, I look at myself and say, John, you can do a ground hornbill impersonation in the bathroom mirror.
Not only can you, but you will.
I will.
You will do it in the presentation.
Quite right.
Oh, wow.
No words. No words. I've actually been shat on by one of, I've actually been
fell victim to its defecation.
I've fallen victim to this bird's defecation before. Sorry for that fraudulent slip. That's a separate webinar series. But remarkable birds, these pearls fishing owls.
So where did you connect with that, John?
Pafuri is your best spot, but also if you book a river walk at Olifantsrest Camp in the Kruger National Park, and then the private reserves, Bululi as well. They've got one or two pairs, and surprisingly, there's pairs on the Bladder. Well, not surprisingly, but there's pairs on the Bladder River as well, in the heart of Hoedspruit. The Bladder River runs through, and that river system, I have little doubt, I know, is as in South Africa we say, vrot. Rotten with these birds. So
that's incredible.
They're around. And of course, like I said, the wildlife encounters are magnificent. This is a leopard. And the specific leopard is a female that goes by the name of Tlalamba. She is from Djuma. For those of you who watch Wild Earth and have followed her story, she is part of a royal lineage of leopards that the show has followed for many years. But simply mind-blowing, the wildlife encounters that you can have. And of course, one of my best images of Hammerkorp, which has also come from the Lowveld, but makes certainly for some interesting encounters.
Wow.
African barred owlets, and pearl-spotted owlets, and scops owls. These small little owlets and birds of the night are certainly bountiful in the Lowveld. The ever-present and Picasso-like lilac-breasted roller, and of course the highly secretive and and uh, and elusive. There we go. African finfoot. Also, this was taken on the Blyde River, again in Hoedspruit, or if you're in Skukuza, the Skukuza high water bridge or high level bridge is also a very, very good spot to try and find these birds. Mountain wagtail, not necessarily in Kruger, but certainly along the Blyde River, closer to the escarpment, is your best bet for these birds. And then hastily moving through Tzaneen, and another exceptional destination, and two names of guides that have established themselves as leaders within the world of bird guiding here within South Africa and also on the international scale. David Letsalo and Paul Nkumani need little introduction. They are exceptional guides. They operate all the way from Polokwane through to Tzaneen, so you'll see their names featuring over the next couple of slides. And they'll take you to show you an array of species, both from Woodbush Forest Drive and Machubus Kloof, everything from black-fronted bushshrike to Cape parrots, Barrett's warbler, all the way down to bathawks at Agatha Forest Reserve near Tzaneen as well. Species like white-breasted cuckoo shrike, blue-spotted wood dove, all of these birds are in and around the greater Tzaneen area. And of course, Letsitselia brings in the potential of the closest bit of woodland that we have here in South Africa to Mjombo woodland. Exceptional birding. And then, of course, Harnetsburg or Heinertsburg is, I don't know why I say Harnetsburg. I think it's the Joburg four ways in me. But yeah, also exceptional birding. You probably won't see a buff-spotted flufftail like this. I'm just forewarning everybody now. But you know, on the rare chance that you do, you'll probably still be able to see those characteristic buff spots, hopefully. Small, diminutive little bird that sticks to the forest undergrowth and has this drawn out.
That's really remarkable, John. That's a good impression.
It's very cool. So Narina trogon, another magnificent bird. I mean, just look at that. It is absolutely spectacular. That red and bright green as well. This is a bit of a tricky one at first glance, but one of those specials that I think everybody does want to see. And it's a Barrett's warbler. So yeah, characteristic call. You hear it, its song echoing throughout the forest when you're in these areas around Machubus Kloof in particular, but also at Kaapsehoop. And trying to get your eyes onto them is difficult. And so yeah, with the help of David and Paul and Enos, yeah, you'll certainly probably finally get visuals of them.
And John, can you do an impression of this bird's call?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Well, chaps, do yourself, well, guests rather, do yourself a favor and make sure you go and listen to that call on your bird app. It is really beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. And then of course, finding our way to Polokwane. You know, people, again, another destination where you think, you know, Polokwane is not necessarily conducive of good birding, but it is. Polokwane Nature Reserve. I mean, I suppose Polokwane as a whole is synonymous. Well, short-clawed lark is a species synonymous with Polokwane. So if you need short-clawed lark, then the grasslands, be it at the nature reserve or Chibeng, which is west of Polokwane, then this is the area you want to go to because they're here, they're in good numbers, and it's just fantastic. It's actually part of the same family as the long-billed larks, so its call is very similar. It's this high-pitched descending call, and it's quite something to see because you normally associate these long-clawed larks with completely different habitats to what you would think they would be in at Polokwane. So yeah, fantastic long-billed larks, not long-clawed. But yes, Polokwane Nature Reserve, excellent, renowned. Chibeng, and like I said, David Letsalo and Paul Nkumani are operating both in those areas. And there is just an image of a short-clawed lark, nondescript bird, relatively long, thin, slender bill, and of course its hind claw somewhat shorter, but certainly not a characteristic field identification feature that one would look at. The call and display of this bird is probably what's going to get you onto it 9 times out of 10. And whilst you're there, just a bit of a disclaimer to keep your eyes peeled for spike-heeled lark. Why? Because, well, this spike-heeled lark's population, the one around Polokwane in particular, is separated from the nearest population, which is probably within Gauteng. And there's a very, very good possibility that this race of spike-heeled lark may be the topic of discussion for potential splits going forward.
Ooh.
Don't all run away now from this webinar and say that you're going to pick a new species of spike-heeled lark. It's just certainly got everybody thinking that there may be scope for a potential split going forward.
And John, when might one know about that?
I think as and when the studies go ahead, I don't think anybody's really allocated to taking information on these birds just yet.
Okay.
So we'll just have to wait and see the fun of science, everybody. So other ways to prepare. Well, you've now heard from Go Birding. So keep Go Birding in mind. Learn from others. Okay, birding is a journey and it all forms part of mentorship. Every single one of us go birding with those who are more experienced with one another, more experienced than we perhaps might be. And that's what makes birding just so much more fun. Ask questions. Don't ever think birding has stupid questions. It's not. Literally, there was always a time with me or Kurt or Mark Anderson, our CEO, where we opened up a field guide and we couldn't separate a sparrow from a fish eagle. Every single person had to start on that journey, and don't ever think that the question is a stupid question. Join Facebook groups, but keep in mind that some Facebook groups are blessed with the presence of some trolls. So just make sure that you don't let those negatively impact you and your birding journey. Of course, join BirdLife South Africa and one of the associated bird clubs, all of which are featured on Go Birding. Hire the services of BirdLife South Africa accredited birding guides, the details of which I've shown. Join the South Africa Listers Club as well and share with us your journey, your listing journey. It's not a journey to race after numbers, rather a journey where we encourage you to explore South Africa's avian diversity, and of course use the Go Birding platform. And as we near the end of the presentation and the eagerly awaited question and answer session, a punt for 25 years of Avitourism. The Avitourism project here at BirdLife South Africa is one of the longest standing projects within the organization. It has been phenomenal. I joined in August of last year, and within these last couple of months, I've had the opportunity to meet individuals who've been birding with me or took me birding, guided me as a young birder when I was 12 and 13 years old, and showed me some of my very first lifers, the likes of David Litsalo, the late Frank Mambaso, all of these individuals, even Enos, who you see there within the center frame there. And it's just a phenomenal journey. And I must just encourage everybody to, if you don't know more about it, please get into contact with me because Avitourism is focused about growing South Africa as a birding destination. But more importantly, and I think this is what I've realized since I started in August, is that it's probably I'm very biased in that I say, and it's a good thing our co-host Jess isn't here as well because she'd probably throw me with European roller pin badges. But this is by far, I think, the most impactful project that we have here at BirdLife South Africa, because not only are we dealing with conservation through education, but we're dealing with people's lives and people's livelihoods. And just today, I had to deal with a quote from Enos where he said, "If it wasn't for BirdLife South Africa having taught me about birds and birding, I don't know where I would have been today. It's given me a job and it's given me a purpose." And I think that just speaks testament to the massive amount of impact that this project has on the livelihoods of people within South Africa.
I've been lucky enough to be with some bird guides before, and I can attest to the fact that it's an incredibly passionate group of people that you've got working with you, John, and you're very fortunate for that.
I think fortunate is probably still an understatement. I consider myself very, very lucky, and these people play such an important role within the world of conservation, not just in terms of their communities, but in terms of being role models and wildlife warriors for everything and all the habitats and that they're busy birding in. Thank you, everybody. I'm seeing a whole bunch of round of applause here. I'll take my hat off in thanks, but I unfortunately am not wearing one, but thank you very much. I see there's a couple of questions that are busy
Yeah.
coming through as well.
Well, thank you, John. That was really a tour de force. You are clearly so passionate and so knowledgeable. I think we're incredibly lucky to have you here at BirdLife South Africa. I know I, for one, see you as one of my favorite colleagues. So I'm very glad that we got this opportunity to appear on camera together, for the record. So thanks,
Thanks.
John. And thank you, everybody, for attending from throughout the world, and throughout South Africa, especially. I hope that you've been inspired to plan your next birding trip with Go Birding. I know I certainly will be. In fact, I'll be heading off to Kruger fairly soon. And yeah, I think John's WhatsApps will be flooded with me asking him for help identifying a call or a photo of a bird that I glimpsed in a bush or something. So yeah, it's great that you're our go-to guy.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. I think it all forms part of yeah, I mean, just sharing our passion with everybody, be it colleagues or anybody else.
Yeah. So speaking of, we have an Anthony who'd like to know how best to contact you.
Anthony, messenger pigeon is generally quite good. Um, no, but jokes aside, John.Kinghorn at birdlife.org.za. I'm not going to put my cell phone number here, but it is on the BirdLife South Africa website as well. It's not because I don't want to share my cell phone number. It's just that I tend to have more control over my emails amidst the plethora of WhatsApps that get directed to my inbox on a daily basis. So please feel free to contact me there, and I'm happy to chat about anything.
Yeah, I've added John Kinghorn's email address to the chat box, so just be sure to copy and paste that. Otherwise, you will find it on Go Birding, as John says. So we've got an interesting question here from George that I think will, open us up to yeah, quite a constructive discussion and an interesting discussion. He says that we've mentioned that you mentioned the important economic importance of Avitourism, and they would just like to know some examples of towns or rural communities in South Africa where people have shifted from potentially environmentally damaging livelihoods, so unsustainable practices of a certain kind, and changing those practices because they are now able to sort of utilize their avian resources.
George, it's an amazing question that, and off the top of my head, I can't give you an exact example, but I mean, one of the sole purposes of what we're doing here within the Avitourism project as a whole, but also the Empowering People program, which is the program here at BirdLife South Africa under which Avitourism falls. So EPP, Empowering People program, is the umbrella. And I think the major thing here for the program and the project is that we engaging with communities to do exactly that, to show them the benefits of ecotourism, but specifically avitourism. And as it stands, we're engaging with a whole lot of different stakeholders within the tourism industry, be it the soon-to-be governing body, if not already, the Field Guides Association of South Africa, right up to accommodation establishments, municipalities, local tourism, provincial tourism departments, national tourism from the Department of Tourism. These are all people and stakeholders that we're getting involved to highlight to them why birding or avitourism is important and of such benefit. And that's why, I mean, in 2010, we completed the study. Martin Taylor, one of my predecessors, did that study that I cited at the beginning of this talk for the Department of Trade and Industries. And it was a look into avitourism. And we hope to do something similar to that now that we are almost 15 years forward, something more current. But engagement with towns where there is unsustainable practices is important to show them the benefits of tourism. And if I think of just the work that we're busy doing in Dullstroom at the moment, there's vast amounts of agriculture in that area. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, and certainly please don't take it that way that I'm now against farmers and people involved in agriculture. No, not at all. But certainly there is a balance where they can benefit not only from agriculture, not only from renewable energy, but also from ecotourism and specifically avitourism. And our engagement with communities, with stakeholders, with towns, with landowners, it all forms part and parcel of how we're trying to grow the nation's appreciation and specifically government's appreciation around avitourism. And I think we're making a big impact, and we've really identified three key areas as it stands. this year and into 2026, where we would like to enhance and grow Avitourism. We see a massive potential. And also, it's going to have a compound effect on a consequential effect on our guides as well, and generating business opportunities for them. So, very, very a brilliant question. Really, it was, George. I'm sorry I can't give you an exact answer. And if perhaps you maybe know of a town that has shifted, along those lines, please just, yeah, do let me know. Send me an email. I'd love to know. But it's certainly something that we're striving to achieve on a daily.
I mean, it's very much an ongoing project, isn't it, John? And it's what makes it so robust is how many sort of lines of connection there are between just different sectors, whether it be of the economy or of different groups of people, different populations. That's what makes the entire Avitourism project work, I think, is it just connects so many different strands. But the thing is, those take time to be formed and to be strengthened and to be developed. So.
Yeah, I mean, 25 years on, and I mean, we've made a massive, massive impact in 25 years. And that's I'm like I said, I'm not being facetious or really, trying to toot our own horn here, but it's if you compare it to what's taken place across the world. I mean, BirdLife South Africa's work is essentially the precedent out there, and we're fortunate to be in this position where we've even started engaging with BirdLife partners in other parts of the world. Ecotourism driven countries in the neotropics, South and Central America. BirdLife partners there are starting to get into contact with us. BirdLife partners in East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda. They're all part and parcel of our discussions now to take what we've learned here over 25 years and hopefully start implementing on a broader scale as well.
Thanks, John. Yeah, very comprehensive answer. So thank you. And we've got a Faisal who's asking, what are the reasons why most, if not all of the bird guides are men? So I know that maybe a lot that were mentioned in the presentation were men, but there are women bird guides that we have.
We do. And we're actually within the past 2 years, 2 to 3 years, if not even before, there's been a strong movement and focus to want to train. It's certainly before 3 years. Andrew, my predecessor, was heavily involved in trying to train and grow birding as a profession amongst people who are amongst women. So now what we're doing is women birding is crucial to us, and having more females involved in conservation equally so. Now, remember, guiding is one thing. Yes, it's tourism, but every single guide is also a conduit between your everyday average Joe and nature, and that is what we call conservation through education. They're teaching somebody about something, and they want to conserve it as a result, hopefully. Now, we want to create more females in conservation and guiding. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Unfortunately, it's a very male-dominated world out there, but in the same breath, there are some absolutely remarkable female birders out there and female guides, professional safari guides, who I've had the opportunity and the fortune of meeting, and they are truly phenomenal, and they would outguide the socks off of any male guide that I know. And the same goes for our female community bird guides. I recently had the opportunity to spend time with Letu Ncele on Djuma Private Game Reserve for Wild Earth, and just spending time with her was mind-blowing. Her knowledge, her skill set, her ability to identify birds rapidly and quick is just magnificent. So there is a big focus. I don't want to keep it long-winded because we're doing some very exciting things with the female guides especially, but there is a big focus on trying to give increased opportunities to our network of female guides as well.
Thank you, John. George, who asked the question earlier about the communities that you just answered, suggested Vakastrom serves as an example of bird-friendly farming and livestock raising practices, and I suppose that brings up the point that in a small scale sense, small scale in terms of the changes being made, but large scale in terms of the impact. There are a lot of examples of that. I know that a lot of our people that work in the field have very productive and positive relationships with farmers and members of the community at large, for sure. And I mean, this year we're celebrating the red-billed oxpecker as our bird of the year, and the reason it's been introduced so successfully is because of an eagerness among the agricultural community to move away from toxic pesticides, for example. So as long as our work continues, we will see changes like that being made, and it will have major impacts in terms of the health of ecosystems.
Definitely. Definitely.
And I suppose, community bird guides fall into that. They become, what's the word? Ambassadors, I suppose.
They do. They're ambassadors for conservation, and I've seen interactions. One of our guides in Hoedspruit, Joel Satole, when we sat and met with our Hoedspruit guides at the end of last year and engaged with them, found out more about how they're doing, what we can do as an organization to better them. They're upskilling, even though they're existing guides for many years. We asked them, how has BirdLife South Africa impacted your lives? And of course, I gave you the example of Enos earlier, and that's a very brief version of Enos. Enos has a far deeper tale to tell, but that's another story. And ask me when you see me, or ask Enos. But Joel said that if it wasn't for a simple environmental education and awareness day that was held at his community school when he was in preschool, in the community, I believe, and Joel, forgive me, but I think it was Acorn Hook near Hoedspruit. If it wasn't for somebody from an NPO coming and giving that specific thing, he would never have pursued a career in wildlife and birding and conservation. Now, not only is Joel the guide, but he's also an educationist, and he's also teaching local communities and schools within those communities about the importance of conservation. So, classic example, you've got a specialist guide who's also an ambassador and a warrior for wildlife.
I mean, maybe you can mention your colleague, or rather your manager, I suppose, Nandi's work.
Nandi's work.
The Flufftail Festival occurred a few weeks ago.
Yep. I mean, Nandi is the program manager for the Empowering People program, and one of our leading women in conservation here at BirdLife South Africa. There's many, Hanneline Smith-Robinson, and I fear now that I've named more than one person, I'm going to overlook many other people. Jessica Wilmot already, Linda van den Heever, all of these amazing female conservationists within the organization. And Nandi's work is that. It's community engagement and grassroots conservation. She's going into these schools, and she's following these kids through their schooling career. She's implementing she's using birds as a conduit for a conservation message. And she's created lesson plans for these little youngsters. This year's oxpeckers incorporated into learning materials. It's amazing to see these youngsters and how receptive they are, opening their eyes up, looking through binoculars for a first timers. Those are the kinds of moments where we may think, okay, perhaps what impact is this actually making in the immediate future? Well, we won't know. We'll only know when one of those lighties becomes a Joel Satole. And that may be in 20 or 25 years' time.
Yeah, it's absolutely important and vital work. I was lucky enough to attend a bit of a workshop, I suppose, with some students from the Boys and Girls Club, hosted by our colleague Nandi and Tandulwazi, as well as Marlies Miller, who we've mentioned earlier. And it was one of these workshops, teaching these kids who'd probably never used binoculars before or been taught to specifically appreciate birds, and seeing their eyes light up when we firstly just went through the SASL bird guides that we had in the classroom, and Nandi taught them how to use a field guide. It was really, really wonderful, and yeah, nothing matched what followed, which is when we went out into the wetlands at Marievale and we began seeing birds left, right, and center, and fielding questions from kids who are pointing out birds in every single direction, wanting to know what they were called, wanting to see them. They're struggling to focus their binoculars, and yeah, I mean, it's those kids who will one day become these bird guides, and that's what makes it such a wonderful program.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I see the times marching on. Perhaps there's time for one more
questions,
for a couple more questions. I know we're going over the time a little bit, everybody, but I hope that a lot of you are still deriving some benefit from Kurt and my chat.
Yeah, at least we've lost a bit of the nonsense that we were displaying earlier. We've got our sort of work faces on now. In fact, when we were setting up the seminar, John and I were cracking jokes between each other, and we said, no, stop it, save it for the seminar. But here's a question from Sean, who would like to know how the average birder can contribute to citizen science in South Africa, and they suggest logging birds, whether that be through iNaturalist or eBird or BirdLasser. And I just wanted to ask you to also include the fact that your bird guides aren't only guiding sort of Avitourism, they're also contributing actively into conservation studies.
Quite right, and a great question, Sean. For the best way in which you and I and anybody really listening to this can contribute towards citizen science is through logging your bird sightings on any one of these citizen science-based platforms. It could be eBird, it could be eBird contributing towards a global database, and then the SABAP2 database. You can contribute by submitting your sightings via Bindo, which is a mobile device app, or BirdLife, and just submit your sightings, really. Because if you look at all these distribution maps that we're busy dealing with, the new red list to soon be released, which our colleagues are busy finalizing at the moment, those are all distribution maps and data that is pulled from citizen science. So it's hugely beneficial. And like Kurt alluded to, our community bird guides are actively involved in this, be it through submitting sightings or simply using one of these platforms to promote themselves within from a marketing perspective and to people from across the world from an Avitourism perspective. But certainly every single one of them, again, it's this multifaceted thing. They have specialist skill which can be incorporated into different areas of life and different industries.
Yeah, as specialized and sort of expert as they are, certainly don't be discouraged from using these atlasing apps. They're a bit daunting at first, but as John mentioned earlier, in general birding advice, ask your friends, and that applies as well to understanding these atlasing apps. So, go to someone in your local club, go to someone that you see birding out in the park or at some birding sites. I've made many friends by just going up to the other guy or other girl with binoculars in the park and asking them about, what's that bird that's calling? I'm not familiar with this area.
Yeah.
So, go up to them, ask them, what app do you use to log? Can you show me how to use it? Because that data is invaluable.
Yeah.
It's got so many applications. So yeah, thank you, Sean, for asking that question, because citizen science is a very, very valuable tool.
Yeah, no, 100%, and definitely agree. So, everybody can do it. It's free, and it helps a lot.
John, I think we have kind of run out of time, unfortunately, unless we see some claps or some hearts or something, and we can go through some more questions. Do you want to go through more questions?
I'm happy to answer questions. Perhaps we can do one more, and then what we can do is, if anybody then has any burning questions.
Oh, we're getting lots of claps, lots of hearts.
You're more than like, get off stage now.
This is like the Oscars that happened yesterday.
This is like the Oscars.
This is the equivalent of the playoff music happening. Just give me one more minute. John, I'm very glad to be here with you, because I know that if there's anyone at BirdLife who cannot shut up about birds and birding and conservation, it's you.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question, which I believe it's from someone who's in Germany, Eva Lisa. Hallo, wie geht's es dir, Eva? In Germany, we often hear critics that Avitourism, or I think tourism in general, can have a toll on the environment from a sort of pollution perspective, a fossil fuel burning perspective. I suppose it becomes essentially what's the word? Hypocritical if you're into observing the environment. I suppose one thing I'll answer to that. Well, let me finish the question. Sorry, I always get ahead of myself. What argument do you have against the criticism that the benefit of Avitourism may outweigh the potential environmental costs of these activities?
That's a very, very valid question, Ava. And to be honest with you, I mean, if I were to sit here and say that tourism in general, didn't have a negative effect on, climate and climate change, I'd probably be lying. And so it's best that I don't do that. I suppose one needs to look at it from the perspective that it weighs up against one another. I guess when it comes to climate change, we can't necessarily say, okay, yeah, but you're doing something good here and it's offsetting against, the actual impact against the environment. Excuse me. But, I think when it comes down to ecotourism and when it comes down to avitourism, especially in these tourist or wildlife economy-driven destinations and countries, I think it's hard to ignore something like that. Because the benefit that you derive through conservation, through education, bringing people to a destination, showing them birds, showing them wildlife, they may be people that have never, ever, ever even cast an eye at something, be it a lion, be it a leopard, be it a bird, a buurtjie.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, you take them and you put that into them, and you put an individual who's passionate about what they're doing, and you share that information with them. All of a sudden, they make this connection, which never existed before. And once that connection is made, they begin to have a sense of appreciation. And the minute somebody appreciates something, they want to start conserving it.
100%.
And you absolutely cannot look away from that. And the impact that ecotourism has within South Africa, I think, on a larger scale in terms of converting people who were never previously supporters of conservation in all corners of the world that have now come to South Africa to enjoy our natural heritage. I think it's important to keep that in mind as well. And I mean, I must encourage birders and everybody here and anybody else you may speak to make sure that you try and make up for that impact that you may have by traveling in pursuit of birds in other facets of your life. And there's ways and means you can do that. And I suppose there's a terminology or phrase that I like to think of where if you think that perhaps, what is recycling the straw going to be, for example, or what is, carpooling with 4 people instead of 4 vehicles going to a destination going to mean. But, it's simply a drop in the ocean. But at the end of the day, if every single one of us start to do something like that, it's one drop here, one drop here, one drop here, and one drop here. Eventually, you have a mass of water which equates to the ocean itself. So it's important to keep that in mind as well. You can make up for that in different facets of your life. But it's a very, very valid question.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I think it's important to point out that, birding as a pursuit in general is a very low impact one. I mean, it's not consumptive. So long as you're birding responsibly, you buy your pair of binoculars and hopefully, they last more or less a lifetime.
And a lot of the binocular companies now, such as Swarovski Optic, they've converted all of their entire operation in Austria is now off the grid. The products they're using are recyclable where possible. They really are doing a massive focus on trying to make an impact in terms of reducing their carbon footprint. So even the companies in that we're busy dealing with and supporting in the overall tourism industry are also trying to make a difference where they can.
Absolutely. I mean, they even contribute towards bird life in general, towards conservation goals.
Yeah.
So you buy your binoculars once, hopefully, unless you lose them. And that's that. I mean, you maybe buy your one field guide, and these days you just access your field guides online. Those are things important to consider.
Yep.
Another thing to keep in mind is also as John mentioned about carpooling, we've gone on birding outings together, and more often than not, there's 5 of us squeezed into the car.
Yep.
And when it's not a sort of birding outing where you're going and driving somewhere, you can walk to your local park and you can enjoy birding. And luckily we live in Joburg where that is so enjoyable.
Yeah.
So productive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's to answer your question, I think it's an Avitourism project like this that actively supports conservation that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah. 100%.
It's not an extractive thing that you're doing by going to Kruger Park or by going to any of these wonderful places that John's mentioned. You're supporting local economies, and if you're supporting community bird guides, for example, you're supporting conservation work in general.
Yep, 100%.
So I think I'm very happy and very proud to be part of this this overall hobby. I think it's a very positive one in the world.
I mean,
birders to be a part of.
Birders are inherently. I mean, I like to think that birders are appreciative of conservation and the plight that our world faces. I think more so than your average Joe, somebody who perhaps doesn't have an interest in any other facet of nature or wildlife, not necessarily just birding. So certainly, I think birders are in a unique position in that we probably are able to understand the problem that we're facing more so than others.
I mean, we had that question earlier about the ways in which the Avitourism project is helping communities move away from something that is potentially, destructive or unsustainable, and turn their habitats and their environment into something that's completely sustainable.
I mean, I saw a comment come through out the side of my eye. Somebody said, how do we move some of these people away from, or share the message in areas where perhaps they're aligned with something unsustainable, such as poaching or various other unsustainable practices. And the example is not just found in birding. You go to the Lowveld, the very region we've just covered in tonight's talk, and you look at all these professional not all of them, but there's instances where some of these individuals who are now professional, highly regarded trackers and guides within the industry, working at high-end profile lodges, have come from a background of I wouldn't necessarily say poaching, but perhaps hunting for, to put meat on their plate. There's instances like that all over where people have been taken, shown that something is unsustainable in terms of what they're busy doing, and been roped in and been involved in conservation. So it's not impossible, and it all forms part of the objectives for the project and what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, but it's a very interesting and very worthwhile line of questioning. I think it's important that we have people that are potentially critical. I don't know if critical is the word, but call some of our behaviors and our assumptions into question, because it's something that you do need to examine.
Correct.
And I think we're all very confident that that it is worth doing, at the end of the day. So yeah, thanks everybody. And should we call it a day, John, or do you want to answer some more questions? Are any of these burning a hole in your?
I mean, having a look here out the corner of my eye.
I'm very pleased, and just want to thank you all for your incredible participation. It's been so great to have this back and forth, even though we don't get to see you, and unfortunately you have to see us. We have really appreciated your participation, your feedback.
It's been great, certainly from a host and presenter perspective. It's been excellent, and those of you who've been supportive of what we're trying to do with the new format, it's been it's hugely appreciated. I think perhaps just before we part ways, just a plea from my side and the side of Avitourism, in that we are still in a position where the project is looking for a key donor and funder. Unfortunately, we were in a position where we now find ourselves needing to find an additional donor. Small donations are very much appreciated. Any donation is appreciated. It can be R1. But at the end of the day, we are looking for somebody who can really support us. Swarovski Optic is our current donor and title sponsor. They're doing phenomenal work alongside Wilo Distributors from Durban. And they are fully invested in what we're doing here in Avitourism within BirdLife South Africa. And we need somebody to join our ranks so that we can grow our efforts and continue to do what we're doing, not only to impact conservation, but to impact livelihoods of people who perhaps have been going forth in life, not believing that they may have a second chance. So please, if you have any leads, or perhaps you may be interested, I would appreciate a simple email, or you could have a look at the birdlife.org.za page for donations if you feel the need. But it's been a pleasure. I hope everybody's been wearing sunglasses with this ring light casting an inordinate amount of light on the bald forehead of Kurt and the bald full head of me.
John, I don't have a forehead. This is embarrassing, everybody, but I'm going to do it because you've been such a wonderful audience. I don't have a forehead. I've got something closer to about a 7 head. So in the office, I assume that people call us bald and balding. But unfortunately, so we were your bald hosts, and we really enjoyed having you here with us tonight. So thank you very much for joining. Please check out our website, get in touch with John, and we'd love it if you continue to be involved with us the way you have been tonight. So thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, everybody.